Not that I want to get down, but you know, there's plenty of review. Two bedrooms, downstairs, and a loft upstairs. The kitchen, I just want to go, it's not good. My wife, that guy, that's how it's right. Well, you do work out, you know? Lawn taken care of, sidewalks taken care of. I think we're able to show.
Yes. Well, I think we're going to be moving back.
Good. All right, be good. I'm looking for Tommy.
Yeah, I know, where were you?
Good to be here.
Okay. He's probably wearing a partnership.
Yeah.
Yep. Just let me, I have everything screwed up, just let me know when this first line.
No, it's not. It's not. I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the West Goshen Township Board of Supervisors meeting for September the 2nd, 2025. Will you please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Please be aware this meeting is being live streamed on YouTube, and also the meeting may be audio or video recorded by people present in the room. First agenda item is public comment. So this is for anyone in attendance who has a question or a comment for the board or staff about an item that is not on the agenda. Okay, I don't see anybody there, so we'll move on to agenda item number 4, which is presentation of the 2024 financial audit for West Goshen Township. I'd like to welcome Mr. Carl Hogan. With your company is now Clifton
Marcel, yes.
Thank you. We have a few slides to walk through, to go through with the board.
kind of the segue on that, I'd like to start off before I go through my presentation just to apologize. I know there's a certain expectation of when the audit should be done. I think typically we're here in the June timeframe. We've had some kind of, my practice has had some changes in terms of gone through 2 mergers and acquisitions within the last 2 years. So that's, caused a lot of, disruption in my practice of business, et cetera, and hence it's kind of flowed down into timing of the receipt of the audit for the township. I just want to apologize and want to make it clear that it has nothing to do with the township staff or, it's all due to the changes with the merger and the acquisition and delays created by it, and everything was provided to us by the township staff in a timely manner to be able to conduct our audit, as you probably know and used to here as the board of supervisors. They usually provide timely information not only to you, but to us to do our audit. So I just want to start with that and kind of get that out of the way, because I know we're here in September now at this point in time. So just wanted to kind of start with that tonight. So as you can see here, we're now Clifton Larson Allen. The good news is Clifton Larson Allen is the largest state and local government practice in the country. I think we've got a really good product in terms of the audited financial statements that you're receiving here for December 31st, 2024. The next slide through is this little disclaimer here in terms of this information is not audited financial statements. If you need to refer back to the audited financial statements, they're being performed or presented for the official information. The next page is the audit overview. So in the case of West Goshen Township, we were engaged to perform several different audits of financial statements. So we have your basic audit for the town in accordance with United States generally accepted accounting principles. There's also a requirement that you need to do a regulatory basis with the Department of Community and Economic Development. We also perform an audit of the sewer and sewer reserve funds, which are included in your GAAP financial statements. Also, we have separate audits for not only your police, non-uniform, and sewer pension plans, an audit of the tax collector statement of collections, and then also we have a sewer authority audit that's also performed in accordance with United States generally accepted accounting principles as all. So we issued those about 5 or 6 separate reports on all those financial statements. The next page, the independent auditors report. So you will receive an independent auditors report with each one of those 5 individual financial statements. And in each one of those, you will have different bullet points that kind of break down the different parts of the financial statements. But what we want to focus on is the opinion paragraph. Within each one of those audited financial statements, we give a unmodified or clean audit opinion, basically stating that the numbers were presented to us by management for the year ended December 31st, 2024 were fairly presented. I don't think we had any kind of journal entries or any kind of changes to the financial statements. What you see here on a monthly basis is what's being reiterated within the audited financial statements at year end. Also within the independent auditors report, we discuss what management's responsibilities are, what our responsibilities are. One of the most important paragraphs within there is the required supplementary information. Even though the required supplementary information we're not required to give an opinion on, I think it's some of the most important information within the auditor's report. Some of the biggest pieces within the required supplementary information consist of management's discussion and analysis, which is in the front of the financial statement. So if you're not an advanced user of the financial statements, I encourage everybody to at least read the management's discussion and analysis, because that's written by management. That kind of gives a brief synopsis of the 2024 highlights. But the thing that I like about it the most is, since the audit is a historical document, not to be this historical, but it gives management the ability to talk about things that have happened up to date until the presentation of the audit, but then also to talk about what's going to happen in the future, the township, what's going to impact the township's future. And I think management does a nice job with that within the management's discussion and analysis. Some of the other major things within the required supplementary information budgetary comparison schedule for your general fund. That kind of gives you a outline of, hey, here's what our budget was. This is what we put out at the beginning of the year. Here's how we ended up, and we'll talk about that again tonight. And then finally, there's some information regarding the funding of your pension plans, and that's being provided by the actuary and included in the required supplementary information. And then finally, we have a report on your supplementary information, which is just combining information for your individual funds, and then other reporting to kind of disclose that we're performing our audit in accordance with government auditing standards. So our audit approach is a risk-based approach. If we came here and audited every transaction, we'd be here forever. So what we do is we document your internal controls, we make inquiries of management, perform analytical procedures, we review current and prior year audit reports to kind of determine where are those areas that are of higher risk in relation to the township. So we kind of look at in-depth on cash disbursements, payroll transactions, some of your revenue streams that are related to billing, sewer billings, etc. So those are some of the higher risk areas that we do a test of controls on, and then we're able to design our audit procedures accordingly upon completion of those procedures. And also, we do other things. We review any kind of contracts you enter into, any kind of agreements that you have. We read the meeting minutes, and then once we do all that, we get to our substantive audit approach, which requires us to kind of look at, invoices, also kind of do any kind of recalculation of bills that we need to do. But this consists of looking at a lot of supporting documentation that's provided by management. So here's the results for the year ended December 31st, 2024. So the township has two major funds, one being the general fund, which most of the activities of the township are conducted within. So during the current year, your general fund had an increase in fund balance of $2.4 million from the previous year, which is an increase over the prior year, over the prior year. And then 22.6 million of the 26.8 million at the end of the year of your general fund balance is unassigned. So what I want to stress is, just like in previous years, a lot of this increase in your general fund balance is being revenue driven. Where I'm seeing in other townships, where I'm seeing kind of a downturn in those revenue streams that have been performing very well, such as transfer taxes and earned income taxes, have been kind of trending the other way. In 2024, township had a really good year in terms of not only earned income taxes, but also realty transfer taxes, which is definitely different in terms of what I'm seeing in some of the other municipalities, as they have been trending the other way, as the housing market and some of those other conditions continue to not kind of level off. And then also within that number two, within the general fund, the investment earnings, they were better than budget. I think you have to be conservative when you're budgeting those numbers. You don't know when the interest rates are going to change. So that also accounted for a big piece, the $2.4 million increase in fund balance year over year. The township also maintains a capital reserve fund, and it had an increase in fund balance of $994,000. So during the current year, you had an annual appropriation that was made over from the general fund that you typically do. I think it's about $2.5 million. And those transfers over exceeded your current year capital outlays by almost $1 million. So what's left within the capital reserve fund, which is $6.2 million, can be used for future capital items, which is a good item to have, because then you don't have to necessarily go out and take out debt for any kind of projects that you can accommodate through the capital reserve fund. And then finally, the other funds are what we consider non-major governmental funds. And within that fund is the American Rescue Plan Fund, and those monies are starting to wind down, need to be obligated through the end of 2024. But also within this is your state liquid fuels fund, and then some other capital project and special revenue funds.
If I can answer the American Rescue Plan Fund, are there any monies left on the table? Have they all been depleted or assigned? Have we met all the government deadlines that were required?
You met all that, so correct me if I'm wrong, all the funds were obligated. So
Okay.
even though they weren't recognized as revenue, they had to be obligated. So we want to recognize the revenue in the year in which the expenditures are incurred, but you did your duty in terms of obligating those funds.
So no money's left on the table?
That's correct. The next page, and I think I went through a lot of this already. The general fund budgetary comparison schedule, and as you can see there up at the top, those line items that were better than budget related to the general fund. And then you have your expenditures. Your expenditures were under budget by $1.4 million. And when you take that $1.4 million and you kind of compare it to the $18 million budget that the township has, you're talking within 6-7% being under budget, et cetera. So that's, I think, would be in line. And then also we talked about the budget transfer. $2.5 million was transferred out to the capital reserve fund. And this, at the beginning of the budget process, you anticipated to use $1.2 million of fund balance. You actually added 2.4, so that's a total positive net variance of $3.7 million for December 31st, 2024. Also within the financial statements, we have what you call proprietary funds, and these are funds that are primarily funded with charges for services. So the three major proprietary funds of the township consists of the sewer reserve and the sewer authority are kind of combined in terms of the sewer authority holds the capital assets and the depreciation associated with the capital assets of the sewer authority. And then the sewer reserve and sewer funds account for the operating of the actual sewer operations. So they do all the billings, they pay all the expenses, they pay all the salaries and all the wages associated with the sewer operations. And then the same thing with the waste recycling fund. This is where it accounts for all the billings and all the related expenditures associated with this fund as well. So as you can see, year over year, the biggest piece being the sewer authority fund, because that's all the capital assets and infrastructure associated with the sewer fund. That increased year over year by almost $4 million. And then you have your sewer fund that increased about $700,000 or $500,000, and then the increase or a slight decrease in your waste and recycling net position year over year. So as you can see, the increase in the sewer authority fund was due because of some intergovernmental revenues related to some sewer projects, and they were related to American Rescue Plan Act monies as well. And then also the other funds are supposed to operate kind of at a break even, which they approximately did for 2024. Another big line, part of our audit is related to the pension plans, and the most important thing to the township associated with the pension plans is what are they funding, because they're going to impact what your minimum municipal obligation is going to be on an annual basis. So the higher is percentage funded, the better the minimum municipal obligation is going to be year over year. Police pension plan was funded almost 100% year over year, resulting in a net pension liability of only $61,000. That means that the assets within the trust fund are only $61,000 less than what the total amount of the actuarial liability of the pension plan is. The non-uniform pension plan also well funded at about almost 91%. And they have a net pension liability of $1.5 million. The sewer pension plan was funded at 93%, resulting in a net pension liability of about $588,000. All excellently funded. I think the state, when they look at this, and they want to see your plan funded at about 75 to 80% before they get concerned. And so in the case of the township, because of the good investment earnings that the pension plans have had over the past couple of years, they are well funded. And then also down below, all the minimum municipal obligation payments were made to be determined during our audit.
Okay, Nancy, and what percentage of funding would these pension funds consider to be overfunded, which would then require the township to make some changes in our contribution?
I don't know if there's a requirement to be. I mean, I see some plans that are over 100%. You could run into a situation, so things keep on trending this year, depending on what the demographics and what the actuarial liability comes up with. I mean, you could have a plan that is overfunded year over year. So what happens then is they, change what you might not have to pay anything in to the pension plan if you're over 100% funded, other than the state aid that they provide you on an annual basis. So you always get the state aid for the pension plans that you have to turn over, but you might not have to make an additional contribution above and beyond that state aid.
Previously, where I was, our police pension plan was significantly overfunded, and we had no MMO application of the police pension plan the entire time I was there.
So the next slide is the OPEB plan. So this is associated with the other post-employment benefits that you offer primarily to your police. So there's a liability associated with providing those benefits not only to retired employees but also to current employees, and that determined number is to be $5.9 million. You are only obligated to pay what those benefits are going to be on an annual basis. So you budget what you think those retiree benefit payments are going to be on an annual basis. You have no requirement to fund an OPEB plan. Other townships and municipalities do that, but your only requirement is to fund those payments that are due on an annual basis. We have some required communications that were required as a professional, as our professional responsibility to report to not only management but also to those in charge of the governments. First and foremost, we didn't have any difficulties in dealing with management and performing and completing our audit for the current year. There have been significant GASBs that have been implemented or have been effective for the township, but none of them have had a material effect. We looked at GASB statement number 87 for leases. There are no substantial leases that would be material. Statement number 96 for subscriptions payable. There's no substantial amounts that would need to be recorded there. And then the current year, we evaluated statement number 101 related to compensated absences. Even though it would impact compensated absences, we determined that it wasn't material. I think management wants to kind of look at that one again next year and see if they could implement some of the things effective related to compensated absences. But for the current year, we went ahead and waived that entry. Like I stated before, there were no material audit entries. We had no disagreements. Management and staff cooperated, and detailed audit results were reviewed with management. They came back with their changes, etc. We've changed those drafts, financial statements, and so on, communications back and forth. And then finally,
before you run on to the next final topic there, so just for the record then, did you identify any questionable management practices or areas or protocols that could be strengthened for accountability? That is, were there any letters to management issued to improve internal audits and controls?
I think the township is very fortunate that they have a staff that allows them to be able to employ proper controls. I think the township is the size and staff within the township office that they're able to kind of put in place those protocols that allow the proper internal controls. A lot of the municipalities, especially in Chester County, are kind of small and they don't have that luxury, so there's a lot of compensating controls. But in the case of West Goshen, I think the business office staff is kind of positioned to be able to implement any kind of internal controls that need to be implemented. And then finally, just because of the American Rescue Plan Act, I think we added this in. The township last year did expend more than $750,000 in federal funds, so we didn't have to do a single audit, but the sewer authority did. I know there's a separate governing board for this, but I just want to point out that they did receive some COVID funds related to some infrastructure projects that put them over the $750,000. We tested the compliance requirements for that major program related to COVID, and there was no, there was an unmodified opinion on the compliance there. And then I kind of break down there what the major program was, and then on the sewer authority audit, you can see the audit results related to the American Rescue Plan monies that were used for infrastructure projects.
So the board's, just so the board is aware, this is related to the grant that the sewer authority received at the end of 2023, which was through the PA Small Water and Sewer Program, which was a special round that Pennsylvania made available through COVID relief funds, and it was the same money that was received by the township for the North Hill Storm Sewer Project. So that was what necessitated the single audit.
Okay, well, does the board have any questions on the content of the presentation or other questions about the detailed audit for Carl? Does anyone in attendance have any questions about the audit? So Carl, I do have a couple of comments. So first of all, thank you for your apology, because the board, I believe, is disappointed really in how the audit went this year. I think that staff, as you indicated, really worked hard to provide you the information. We started the year off with BBD as our auditor. Witham acquired the company, and then Witham itself divested or sold that practice onto the firm you're with now. So, we do recognize that creates uncertainty and that there is impact on people, including yourself. However, it's no excuse for the lack of communication that we felt occurred during that period. So, it was only towards the end of May that we were given notice, really, that you were not going to be able to meet the end of June deadline as we would have expected and as required in our agreement with you. So that was really disappointing to us. I think our staff worked extra hard to provide, in some cases, the same information that had been provided earlier in the year. So not a good way to operate. And it also resulted in our township finance director, Ms. Rippey, having to contact the bond trustees for the township debt and inform them that we would not have the audit to them by the end of June as they normally would expect. And I believe that's the first time that's ever happened, certainly in her career here. So given that extra delay that happened beyond the end of July, which is when we were told we would have the audit completed by, I am going to be asking staff to request a further discount to the auditor fees for this year. In addition, the board has directed township staff to look into all options as to how to perform our 2025 audit. So I just want you to be aware of that.
I appreciate it, and I totally understand you have the public to answer to, etc. I know management has to answer to you, and you need to answer to the public, and I understand, and I would be frustrated too if I was in your position.
All right. Well, thank you tonight for your presentation.
Yep. Thank you.
Okay, so I see quite a lot of people in attendance, so I'm going to assume that most of you are here to hear about an agenda item that is titled Discussion and Possible Approval of a Conservatorship Petition for a Property at 905 West Town Road. So I see a few nods for that. So I'm going to ask the board if they are amenable to moving that item up on the agenda to be the next for discussion. Does any board member object to doing that?
Is everybody present that needs to be present?
Yes.
For them to
Yeah. So just give me a minute here. I'm going to get to the right point in my book for this conversation. And I'm going to start by asking Mr. Carl Ewald, Esquire, to come up to the microphone. I'm just going to say a few words to start. I'm going to describe the process we're going to go through, so hopefully this will be helpful for everyone. I'm going to say a few words about Carl and why he's here, and then together Carl and myself will explain the background about what conservatorship means, and in this specific situation, Carl is the expert, so he'll be able to answer more of the questions later on than I will. We'll also go through the petition that we have in detail. So there are 33 facts that are asserted in support of a plea to the court, which we'll explain. And then I will take the time to read a memorandum from the proposed conservator so that you have a clear understanding of what is being proposed. I would ask that we get through that process before we start asking questions, because if you ask questions early, you may find most of them get answered as we go through that full description of what this is all about. So once we've got to that point, we'll open it up for questions, comments, and try to answer everything that you may have in terms of a question. And then having done that, the board will then discuss and deliberate on whether to take action or not. So that's the process we're going to use. So Carl Ewald, Esquire. I always want to say Ewing. I'm sorry about that, okay. Carl. It's just in my head. Was that Dallas Carl Ewing? I don't know. But anyway, Carl has his own law office in media. He has extensive knowledge, experience, and capability in conservatorship law. He'll explain what that's about. The connection to Carl and his practice was made through Buckley Bryan, Kristen's firm, but my understanding is there is no business connection between the two firms. So is that still correct?
Correct.
Yeah. So with that, Carl would be representing the township as legal counsel with respect to the township as being the petitioner, not Buckley Bryan. However, he is compensated by the potential conservator, not the township. The township will only have minor expenses and fees associated with being the petitioner to the court, assuming that action is taken to do that. Again, this is all predicated on what happens with the board later on. So with that as a background to Carl, do you want to describe a little bit around what conservatorship is and its genesis with respect to the act that happened at the state?
Certainly. Thank you for inviting me. The process that we're talking about tonight is requesting for a conservator to be appointed over the property at 905 West Town under the Abandoned and Blighted Properties Conservatorship Act. In that, we file a petition and we ask the court to appoint a conservator to step into the shoes of the owner and remediate the blight. Here we're asking the court to appoint BDP Impact Properties, or Impact Real Estate, as a conservator. It's an organization that it was created in order to help remediate blight in municipalities. And they've done dozens and dozens of these properties. I've worked with them on well over more than a dozen myself. You know, we all know 905 West Town's history. You know, it was purchased 20 years ago, more than 20 years ago, and has not been maintained or cared for since. It's open to the elements. It's quickly deteriorating. It's an attractive nuisance and has police calls because of that. It's a fire risk, and you know, there's buildings on the property that appear to potentially be at risk of collapse. So that's a very negative impact on your community, and you know, our goal here is to eliminate that negative impact on the community. The best thing about the act is that it's streamlined and it's definite. So I'm the solicitor in a number of municipalities in Delaware County, and this has been a great tool for remediating blight in my municipalities. So I've become an advocate for the process because of how well it's worked for our municipalities and the struggles that we had with dealing with blight before the act was enacted. You know, we've done remediation of properties in Swarthmore and Lansdowne, in Media, in Upper Providence, and in Honeybrook, and as well as other places. The even better thing is that there is really little cost to the township. It's next to nothing. We don't ask you to outlay any money. In the end, you know, if we need you know, to talk to or get the guidance of one of the township officials, you know, the code enforcement or the manager, you know, then they will expend some time, and that's the only real expense to the township. So we are asking the board to approve appointing a petition to appoint a conservator, and then if the court were to grant that, the conservator then becomes legally in control of the property. They'll bring a structural engineer in to evaluate all the structures on the property and determine which may be feasible for remediation. There's, you know, clearly deterioration to the barn, to the house, and even to the bridge. So all of these things will have to be evaluated. If not feasible, there are portions or all of it which may be demolished if that's the only remedy that's feasible. And you know, immediately they would go in and remediate the unsafe portions of the property, such as shoring up the bridge. Then we would return to court for approval of the final plan for abatement. Now, after the property is remediated, then we would look, and the owner has the opportunity to reimburse the conservator for the cost of remediation, and if not, then the conservator sells the property and is reimbursed from the sale of the property. And that's why the township doesn't end up having to be responsible for any of the costs. So that's a basic rundown of what the act is and what we're looking to do. I'm happy to answer any questions of the board or the public.
Carl, do you think it's worthwhile to review the key facts that will be asserted if it's approved and this petition is presented to the Court of Common Pleas, or do you want to just see what questions people have?
I'm happy to do it either way. Ultimately, the things that go into whether this property is blighted are specifically set forth in the Act. Here, in this case, we know that the roof is compromised, and even when they try and tarp it, it doesn't end up tarped very long. If you look at the side, the facade of the property, the facade is deteriorating and crumbling. There's openings that allow for the penetration of rainwater. That's a very significant factor in remediation, because once there's rainwater penetration, the deterioration of the property becomes accelerated. It is a risk of fire to the building. We look at whether it's potentially harboring vermin, whether it's a potential attractive nuisance for children. We know in the past that the police have been called because people have entered that building, so that is a big concern. And frankly, it appears to be completely unsafe for someone to enter it. So that's an even bigger concern. And of course, overgrown vegetation has been a big, history at that property, which also is an attraction for harboring rodents and vermin. So, those are the major things that the Act looks at. But obviously, this property being unfit for human habitation is a big telltale sign that it's blighted.
Carl, could you also explain that after the petition is made to the court, what rights the current property owner has to present a case not to appoint a conservator?
Yeah, so that's one of the really nice things about this Act. Once we file the petition, this property is going to be remediated. In the past, dealing with code violations, those types of property maintenance code, those types of things, you can get a fine in the district court, and if they pay the fine, it doesn't have a whole lot of teeth. But ultimately, once we file a petition, this property will be remediated. And the process is that will be, within 60 days, the court's required to hold a hearing on the petition. At that hearing, the owner does have the opportunity to present or request conditional relief, which means that the owner would go out and do the things necessary to bring the property to code and to fulfill the plan of the conservator. In that case, the owner goes out and does it, but they have a strict timetable that's set forth by the court. So if they fail to meet with the timetable of the court, the Act provides that the conservator is automatically appointed, and the conservator then can step in the shoes and continue with the process of remediation. If the court doesn't permit the owner to attempt to do it himself, then they would appoint the conservator, someone conservator. We're asking them to appoint BDP, and then the conservator goes in. We haven't had access inside the property, obviously, because it's private property. The conservator goes in, really evaluates what's there, what the violations of the code are, what the problems with the property are, and then would come back in 30 to 60 days to the court with a plan for remediating the property. The court would then approve that, presumably, or with some tweaks, and then it would go forth. I've had complicated ones that took a year and a half, and I've had quick ones that took 90 days in order to remediate the blight. It's not clear just yet which one this would be, but in the world of law, a year and a half is lightning fast. So we really think that's a big benefit of the Act.
Okay, thanks. So what I'd like to do now is read the memorandum that was sent to you, Carl, from Mr. Dave Foster, who's the CEO of BDP Impact Real Estate, who is the proposed conservator. I think it's really important that I read this out so you get a clear understanding of what is being proposed, and we don't have any expectations that you might have that are unrealistic as to what happens with this process. So if you just indulge me, I'll read this out, and then we'll open it up for the board and yourselves to ask questions of Mr. Ewald. So this is the memorandum from the proposed conservator. The purpose of this memorandum is to provide a preliminary cost estimate and related information to support decision-making regarding a potential conservatorship action against the property at 905 West Town Road. Background: the property is severely blighted and degraded. It poses several immediate safety risks to the community. Among other conditions, the structure is open to entry and unstable on the inside. The walls of the barn are bowed and at risk of collapse. The rear wall of the barn is open to the adjacent hill, which poses a fall risk. The property's overgrowth obscures rubble, holes, and other debris, and there is evidence that the site is used for illegal dumping. From our understanding, the property has been owned by the current owner for more than 2 decades, but he has failed to advance the improvement of the property. It is also our understanding that while members of the community are concerned about the risk and nuisance of the property, others are concerned about preserving or recognizing the historic value of the site. Our organization has worked with municipalities and community organizations across the region to effectuate property remediation for more than 30 blighted and abandoned properties like 905 West Town Road under Pennsylvania's Act 135. We've been asked to evaluate possible courses of action for forcing the rehabilitation of the property under this Act. Proposed conservatorship action. From our review of the property and associated records, the property appears to be a good candidate for conservatorship action. As you know, taking this action would require the township to file a complaint in the Chester County Court of Common Pleas. This filing will need to include an initial remediation plan to address the blight and return the property to productive use. Proposed remediation plan. The exterior conditions of the property indicate that rehabilitation is unlikely to be economically viable. However, we recommend that the conservatorship action proposes demolition, but allows first for an evaluation of the property by an engineer and other construction professionals to determine whether any of the buildings would be suitable for restoration. Additionally, the demolition proposal for this site needs to carry a heavy contingency and will need to be refined after substantial on-site investigation. For example, reports suggest there may be asbestos in the basement of the house and the presence of underground tanks is unknown. Heavy equipment access to the site is limited by the small capacity bridge that fords the creek along the entry driveway. Additionally, the compromised structure of the barn and parts of the main house may require bracing and other measures to ensure a safe demolition. With this in mind, the proposed plan of action should include the following. Cost estimates will be refined further prior to the court filing. So, seek court approval for the right of entry, secure the site, install fencing, secure open entries, install shoring bracing to prevent collapse, install a security system, perform site survey and engineering analysis. The engineer will issue a report on imminent hazards and viability of structures, including the bridge. This report can be used to refine or refocus the reconstruction and demolition plan. Prepare for demolition or selective demolition. Maintain flexibility to pursue full demolition or selective demolition depending on the engineer's assessment. Preliminary cost estimate. So there's 2 options are being presented here. One, the phase 1 is the same in both cases. So scenario 1 is the rehabilitation of the existing residence. The cost of rehabilitation cannot be accurately estimated until we have access to the interior of the buildings. So the phase 1 cost in this scenario is a total of $65,000, which includes the installation of fencing, the engineer's report, and the temporary bridge repair shoring. Scenario 2 is demolition of the existing structures. And in this situation, you have the same cost for phase 1, the installation of the security fence, the engineer report, temporary bridge repair and shoring for $65,000. In addition, there would be a second phase for this scenario where the house and barn would be demolished. And that cost for that is another $295,000 for a total cost of $360,000 as an estimate at this point. So I wanted you to be aware of what is proposed by the conservator. Their view is that given the state of the existing structures, their view is that it is unlikely to be economically feasible to restore it, and that therefore, the most likely course of action to remediate the blight would be a demolition project. Is that fair to say, Carl?
Yes.
Thank you. All right, so we've gone through the background material, and I'm going to open it up to the board first to ask any questions of Carl, and then we'll have whatever questions or comments you have as well. Does the board have any questions?
Yes, sir. Just to follow up from the discussion we're having at this point, would it be fair to say that there's three possible scenarios here? Number one, to fully rehabilitate the existing structure. Number two, do a demolition of all the structures. And number three would be a partial demo and partial rehabilitation of structures. But that third scenario cannot be determined until there's an on-site engineer assessment of the property. Is that a fair statement to make?
That would be correct.
Any other questions from the board? Okay, well, let's open it up for question and answer as best we can. So raise your hand if you have a question. I'll call on you. If you don't mind stating a name when you ask your question, just for the record. We won't ask you to come up because it's take too long. So state your name clearly, and if you're a resident of the township, and then ask your question. Yes, ma'am.
Karen Shelley-Gunther. I live on Bobolink Lane. My concern, since I'm right there, given that there's asbestos scenario in the basement, how are we going to mitigate the asbestos being released into our the aerosols being released?
Yeah, so we don't know what asbestos might be there or won't be there, but the conservator has extensive experience with asbestos and would hire specialists to remediate completely according to code and best practices for remediating asbestos. So, they're not just going to go in there and rip it out. They put up, tenting and air ventilation and everything to make sure not only the neighbors are safe, but also the workers.
This gentleman here, you had a question? Hand up. No, you don't. Yeah, you. So yeah.
I'm Michael Pease. I live on Bobolink Lane, the property adjacent to the 905 West Town. Is there going to be any notification of any of this to the neighborhood? Especially with demolition. I saw Mr. Kravitz's proposed demolition plan, which involved creating a thoroughfare through Bobolink Lane. I have an easement on my property. I guess I need to talk to Chris Bayshore about who actually owns that property.
So if you look at the county records, there is a recorded paper right-of-way to the benefit of West Goshen Township, but it's a legal question whether or not those rights still exist.
Right, because I've also maintained that property for over 30 years. So will I talk to the solicitor about that?
You can contact me, and I would speak to Ms. Camp about that. Are you the gentleman with the driveway that runs over it?
Yes.
Yep.
Okay. Yeah, you can email me, and we can research it. Do you know? I don't want to belabor the point. Do you know about when your house was constructed?
1973.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, it's likely that the public rights have expired. So a paper street or a proposed public road is shown on a subdivision plan. That's an offer for it to be a public road for a period of 21 years from the date the plan is recorded. So if the plan was recorded in the 70s, then the public right, because the township has not accepted that public road or no public road was built over it, then that public rights do have expired. And the law then says it reverts from the center line of the paper street to the adjoining property owners. So it basically becomes private. And then there's private rights to use it based on the plan. So that's a synopsis of that. But as far as what notice you would get, everything will be public. The petition being filed is in the court. Any orders that are entered by the court are public in the docket. But we would obviously come and apprise the board of what the status of the matter is. If the board wanted to send other notification to the neighbors, I'm sure that could be something they can talk about.
And
Can I request that we get notified? as for the minutes?
So I don't want to say
Yeah,
absolutely
it's
yes, but we hear you. We have a process here to work with the legal team and everything else. It's all public information. All our agendas are published in advance of our meetings. We have a lot of people here who are actually part of the township volunteer on the historic commission, and I'm sure they'll be interested in what's coming on. So everyone, I'm sure, will be kept up to date, but there may be a need at some point to give you some official notification of something, and we'll work with the township manager if that is needed.
May I ask, Mr. Chairman, may I ask one question? So if this goes through and it's appointed and it does have to go through demolition, would the conservator have to go through like the normal demolition permitting process through the township?
They would, and just, specifically with your concern about demolition and your property, the plan would be to shore up the bridge in order to allow, vehicles to cross the bridge, not to access through your property.
So everything would stay on their property, and nothing would come through property.
There's no plan to take things through your development.
All right, because it's been like that we've been here 46 years. And it's been like that forever, nobody's ever attempted to do anything.
Yeah.
And it seems a shame to go ahead and have 6 vehicles that have young children, and then they chose problem because it's built an Indian wholesale.
Mhm.
So that's what we were really concerned about. We're also concerned about the water that
Yeah, I mean,
the flood. It is still a concern. It does still come up.
Yeah.
So.
So we're trying to address one problem at a time right now, which is the blighted property.
I
Everything that is done on that property will have to comply with the township ordinances. We have an engineer, he doesn't attend these meetings, he attends every other. And he would be ensuring that all work, including demolition, does not impact the environment and it meets the standards that we have. Okay.
And I believe, and I don't want to belabor the point, I believe that as part of the requirement, if it were to go through demolition, the UCC requires information related to asbestos removal, anything related to lead paint, utility shutoffs, things of that nature. So there's a lot of documentation that has to be put in place before the issue and provided to our building code officials before a permit will be issued.
Okay. Other questions? At the back there, is it Kathy?
Yeah. Okay, so if I understand this right, if you take over conservatorship, the owner loses his right to try and sell the property at that point?
So,
I mean, what if, he went to court or does he have to comply with, what the court, you're estimating $360,000 that he would have to, if he had to put out a demolition and that kind of thing. He wants to demolish it anyway. But
Yeah.
we would be doing him a favor by doing a conservatorship and having this work done, right?
well, ultimately, remediating blight and making a property, does make a property more valuable, so it's in the interest of the, it's doing a favor for the owner when they can't do it for themselves maybe. But, his ability to sell the property, there is a provision in the act where, they could agree instead of the conservatorship to sell it to someone who would do the remediation. But ultimately, they would have to show that, that person would do that, or that entity would do the remediation.
So that would occur in front of the judge as part of this hearing, etc. He would come to a hearing and say, look, I want to not have it go to conservatorship. I've got this other organization that's going to buy the property from me and they're going to do the demolition, right? He
Yes.
could do that.
The
as part of
demolition or
counter to the-
remediation or whatever,
Yeah.
yes.
But the important thing is that the court will put him on a tight time frame versus just saying, oh, yeah, do what you've done for the past 20 years and say you're going to demolish it, but you never do. So that's what the benefit of having it under the court's purview, that the court will say, okay, then, do it or shut up and let the conservator do it. So it's basically 30 to 60 days. They give him a tight time frame.
Okay, other questions? Yes, sir.
John Ponce with my wife Jan, 549 Willow Way. We live nowhere near this property, but we're in West Goshen. Anyway, we're interested in Tories. So to follow up on that question, so let's say the conservatorship is appointed or whatever, and they do all the repairs, and then at the end, the amount, let's just go with the $365,000 for want of a better number, is now due by somebody. Somebody has to pay this. And Mr. Kravitz says, okay, I'll pay it. So he can still do that, right? And if he were to do that, he would retain ownership of his property.
Yes.
Okay.
There's the, he'd have to reimburse the cost of the conservatorship, he'd have to pay a conservatorship fee, and like all the taxes would have to be paid off, but he's current on taxes currently. But yes, there is an avenue for him to retain ownership.
And then I thought I read somewhere that for a conservatorship to be assigned, all current monies that, like fines that are due the township, have to be paid first. Is that correct?
So that's in the process of selling the property. If when you go through the conservatorship, first, back taxes and fees from the township get paid from the proceeds of the sale, then the cost of the conservatorship get paid, and then there's a structure for liens being paid off. It's like a 16-step structure. And ultimately, if all of that gets paid off, then the balance of it goes to the property owner.
So, Mr. Bayshore, has he paid those fines that were due?
No.
So technically, he doesn't have to pay them if this conservatorship, well, right now, he doesn't have to pay them?
So he paid for the citations that were filed in 2023. There was about $4,700 owed. He did pay that last week. The court found him liable of 42 citations, and he appealed those to the Court of Common Pleas. So those are starting over at a hearing date 3 to 4 weeks from now. So right now, those fines are held in abeyance until the Court of Common Pleas hears them again.
But assuming, just so we're clear, just assuming that goes forward and is held, those fines aren't lienable because the property maintenance code is done under a criminal basis. So that's not a lien like it would be for like non-payment of like sewer and trash.
Oh, okay.
Carl, would you mind just describing what the conservatorship fee is in addition to the actual costs incurred?
So there's a minimum conservatorship fee, which is nominal. It's a couple of $1,000s, but obviously this one would be higher. And then when you go through the process of conservatorship, if he wants to reimburse, he has to pay the cost of that the conservator incurred plus 20%, and that's the conservator's fee.
Other questions?
Yeah, I'm sorry, could I just ask one more? So the historic considerations and designations of the property, Native American burial site, things like that, don't really enter into this conversation with the conservatorship?
Because anything like that would be land development issues. This is about the safety and issue of existing structure that can it be saved or not. So it's just about the demolition of structures. Anything to do with future development, which we do need to discuss, because people need to have understanding of what expectations will happen once demolition, if it is that, is completed. So,
okay.
Behind you, there's a lady.
Yes, hi, Ann Rule, 819 Falcon Lane. And this, you may or may not know this, I was just wondering, since the current owner wanted to develop it, had he ever done any studies in terms of impact to the neighborhood, in terms of traffic, in terms of impact to the Westchester Area School District, the impact of water management or ecological, at any point, do we know if he's done that?
Yeah.
He's done nothing. Okay, but that, if it was under the conservatorship, that would be done at some point, no?
No.
Those studies that you're referring to are only done during the land development process.
Okay.
So let's talk about what would happen now. So the conservator, let's say it's a demolition scenario. They spend the money, they get their money back, they get the fee. So now, if he hasn't purchased the property back, if he hasn't paid it, if he doesn't pay that, then the conservator, correct me if I'm wrong at any stage, please, the conservator then sells the property on. Now, who's going to buy a property that's now got a cleared land and a bridge that's back in service? The developer's going to buy it. And they will look at what they're going to pay a price for whatever the value of that development will be. So how many lots can they fit in there that meets their zoning in the township for it? They would buy it, and then they would submit a development application to the township, just like any other development that we see around us.
And then we could, as residents.
Then all those things you mentioned would have to be assessed at that point.
Okay, and the residents who live in and around, like on Bobble Lane, Falcon, West Town, we could then comment if we didn't like what that developer planned for, we would have a say-so?
If the development meets all the existing ordinances and codes of the township, it will be a by right use to develop it. Okay, other questions?
What, sorry, can I ask one last thing? Any, well, this might not be appropriate for this, but like plans to keep it as open space?
So we've had discussions here previously about this property. Obviously, it's been a long-running saga, and the board has twice reviewed the potential to purchase the property. We had an appraisal done, and the board's decision was that it was too expensive for us to consider purchasing the property, given its development value and the unknown cost of what to do with that existing building.
Can you
So-
share how much that was with us?
Yeah, I think we've mentioned it at a previous meeting. The property is currently appraised at $2 million on the expectation that you could put 10 lots on it. That is a conservative 10 lots, meaning it potentially could be less than that.
Stephen Lyons, Save Forsyth Farm. So, developable. If he does not have an egress route, does that make that point moot?
Well, he has access onto West Town Road, correct?
Not on that bridge.
Well, the bridge could be remediated, rehabbed, shored up, whatever's needed to make it a viable vehicle bridge.
On what, wetlands?
It's an existing structure, right? So it's crossing wetlands now. I mean, all things are solvable by engineers, is my opinion. So I think you could come up with a way to cross the property, cross the wetlands.
I thought there was a rule in West Goshen that properties of that size needed 2 access points. No?
I don't think so.
I mean, I don't think that we know exactly how somebody can develop it. Nobody has hired an engineer yet to design a subdivision. The appraiser looks at the highest to best use based on the zoning. So that $2 million is something that an appraiser follows appraisal standards and guidelines and comes up with that dollar figure. The township is obligated by the second-class township code. If they want to purchase property, they have to pay the value of an appraisal, that they, the fair market value as determined by a certified appraisal. So that was what the township has received. That is the value that if they wanted to make an offer, they'd have to offer that amount.
Okay, other question? Yes, ma'am.
Yes, Heather Lowry, I'm at 897 West Town Road, right next to the property. Just per se, it gets to this point. Would, say, the surrounding neighbors be given first choice, considering we're part of the community, to maybe purchase that property?
Or anyone can make an offer.
Yeah.
Subdivide it out, and, I mean, if we put an offer in it, I'm saying if it was the same, would we be able to get first dibs on it, so to speak?
It wouldn't be first dibs, but it would be, it would be sold on an open fair market basis. So it would be offered to the public, and if you were prepared to purchase it, then certainly you'd be able to.
So I can't quite see somebody behind you there. Yes, ma'am.
I believe that it's been discussed that he may be in foreclosure of the property.
Not anymore.
Not
Yeah,
anymore.
the foreclosure was,
I saw the state, but.
it was actually discontinued.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Ma'am, your name for the record?
I'm so sorry. Denise Sweeney, 833 Falcon Lane.
Thank you.
Yes, in front of you. There you go. Yeah.
I'll get my name, Kendra Macco. I live on Bottle Lane. In the 46 years we've been there, between West Town Way, and then there's Falcon, Partridge, Alley, and then West Pine Points Road. We've had numerous accidents, a couple deaths right on Partridge and Bottle Lane on West Town Road. Numerous accidents all the time, but the way the roads come in on West Town Road are very close. There's curves there. With a traffic study, what would that show? Because I don't see, there's people that speed now on that road, especially since they redid it.
So the questions that you're asking are getting into potential land development. We are numerous steps away from
No,
that.
it's a great question.
It's a very
and we
good
know
question.
you want to ask it, and we
Well, no,
appreciate
finish
it.
your thought.
Well, I just wanted to know whether that study would show whether it was viable to even add more 10 houses to it. I mean, you figure out, when our kids were older, we had 3 or 4 cars, coming out of just Partridge Lane. certain animal protectors times. But, on West Town. But the thing is, all I just want to know is, does traffic control come in before somebody can develop?
So the conservator would not be developing
No,
about.
okay, but I was just curious.
So it's part of the overall land development process. So they would hire like a traffic engineer who would go out there and analyze it. They would do comparables to a similar kind of road, similar kind of setting and things of that nature. And there may be some recommendations for control measures that the board would have to consider as part of any land development plan. But that would all be submitted as part of as part of land development application. There's requirements in our.
But I think it's important to understand that in Pennsylvania, you can't stop development because of the traffic. If it's zoned for residential, then the fact that that property, if it was permitted to be subdivided, the fact that it would create more traffic than what's there today, that if it's a by right use, there's nothing that can't serve as a deterrent, or that can't serve as a reason the board to say no, if that makes sense.
No, that's the answer I was.
It could require, depending on the studies and the configuration and how it was proposed to be accessed, there could be conditions the township could impose upon a subdivision plan, but it can't serve as a basis to deny it in Pennsylvania.
And the other thing is so West Town Road is a state road,
Yes.
so it would go through a review process through PennDOT, through their HOP, through their highway occupancy permit process.
Because a couple weeks ago, somebody put a car counter on the stop sign on Partridge Lane, and it was there like 2 days before.
Yeah, we don't, unfortunately, they don't notify us when anyone's doing anything like that, so.
I thought that it would be.
I don't think it was Mr. Kravitz.
I don't know.
Yeah, no, I'm not pretty certain he did not do that.
For 2 days, and it was gone. So
Okay.
But that makes me feel better because you answered some of my questions that you can't do what we think you can do.
Yes, right. I mean, it's frustrating for us because we'll be here and we'll hear these development applications. My recent one was the Wawa on South High Street. And, we think there's some concerns and issues there from a traffic perspective, but, the process is driven by standards, by PennDOT and others, and increased traffic flow in and out of the site is not a reason to deny development.
Well,
So-
that's what I wanted to hear. But
And any traffic study that would be submitted is a public record, so that can be obtained like through a right to know request. But again, there's nothing that's been presented to the township.
Yeah, well, I didn't think so, but I wanted to know whether or not you should release these before you put a building to be built, that is not safe. So, okay, that's fine.
Okay, other questions? Barbara?
Barbara Reinhardt, Sylvan Road. I just wanted to clarify the scenario of you fix this all up, you charge him all this money, and he chooses not to pay, so then you can sell it, right? Will it be reappraised, so it could be reappraised at $4 million?
Yes.
Or so the next developer that comes along will probably have to pay substantially more than the $2 million that was.
Yeah, I mean, I can't speculate what the difference in value would be, but
Yeah, but
I don't think it would be double. It may be a little bit more because they can't, they wouldn't have to, demolish or partially demolish or whatever they would have to do. But ultimately, they would, before they offer it for sale, they would establish what the value of the property is.
I mean, that seems like a likely scenario if you met this gentleman and you see the game like with finance, because he's not going to pay.
No, I get it,
And you're going to then have it up for sale.
And that, I mean, ultimately, I think that's a benefit to the community.
If we wanted to have a legal organization buy it or something, it would be higher.
I don't think we can say that. I'm not certain that the appraisal took
Yeah,
into account the demolition costs.
You know how appraisals are, they try to use references, like what similar property is sold and what similar property got value, and the range in per acre cost value was substantial in the appraisal. And you kind of split the difference and went in the middle with 2 million. And again, he used a big assumption about how many lots could be developed and therefore the value per lot. And that could be way off. So it could be less than 2 million today. Maybe you can only get 3 or 4 or 5 lots on. Maybe not even that. I don't know. No one knows the problem. What the conservatorship will do is remediate the blight that's there.
We still have no money.
We'll have this whole what is going to happen to this property question for some time to come.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions? Stephen.
Thank you, Sean. Three quick questions. Number one, the engineering process, engineering contractors to make the evaluation on the property. Who would appoint those engineers to make that determination? I want to make the point that a home may appear to be in really bad shape, but it's really contingent upon the will of the people if they want to preserve the home, especially if it has enormous historical significance like Barnard Station. Don McKay is doing a one-man show and bringing that house back to life. It's immaculate, it's incredible. So my question is, who makes the determination about structural engineering? Can we get two opinions? Second point is, Mr. Kravitz is notorious for delay tactics. So I am concerned about how he could potentially delay the conservatorship process. And then third point, an immediate concern about the tarping, because apparently Mr. Kravitz still owns the property, and we want to see a secure tarp on that roof.
I'm sorry, I forgot what your first question is. So let me deal with the first. Oh, engineer. Okay. Okay. So whoever's appointed the conservator would select the engineer, and I can tell you that I've gone through the process with two different properties that were preserved, but the cost was extraordinary with a property that's in this bad a shape, and so I can't in good faith say that there's a good chance that this property is preserved. We will send that engineer who's a licensed engineer that specializes in structural evaluation and hey, maybe he comes out and he says, or she says, that this is remarkably well preserved for its condition, or maybe they don't. They'll issue a very thorough report that will show this is what the problems with the property are. This is like the cost of remediating those problems, and they'll have to be evaluated. Especially since we are taking over someone else's property, we have to be mindful of making sure that we step in their shoes and make a sober decision on whether remediation is actually possible.
Carl, just with respect to that report, is that's presented to the court? Is it a public document at that point?
It's absolutely a public document.
And ultimately, who makes that decision whether to rehabilitate or to demolish? Who makes that ultimate decision?
Ultimately, the court makes the decision upon the recommendation of the conservator.
So the judge then, okay.
Yeah.
But I presume that the judge has never said, oh, your costs to remediate are very high, but I want you to do it anyway. I mean, that situation could not presumably, I don't know how a judge could direct you to do that. Because you're really forcing the property owner to lose the property at that point.
Right, so the places where I have seen remediation done in both instances with a property that was this badly deteriorated, those places held very significant sentimental value for the owner, and the owner advocated strongly for the remediation or the rehabilitation of the property. And I don't expect that you would see that here. Okay. Your second question was about delay, and that's one of the great things about the Act. It says you got 60 days court to schedule a hearing. You got, and then, there's 30 days to render a decision. There's 30 days to do a final plan after you get access to the property, and then the court schedules a hearing after you submit your final plan. So, in cases where it's opposed or where there's an owner who is adverse to the action, I would say remediation or at least a plan. If this were to go through a rehabilitation process, it would be 1.5 or 2 years to get through that whole process because of the amount of work that would need to be done. But ultimately, 6 months, I think, is a good estimate for when you see substantial progress. You would see within months, I would think that you would see the securing of the property, you know, so that it becomes safe for intrusion. And then they would get through the whole process of what comes next. You know, but ultimately, if they're granted conservatorship, they're going to go in and address the immediate safety issues right away, and then go back to the court with a final plan. And the tarp, you know, I can tell you that, you know, probably within 48 hours, you know, they will have a tarp on that after they're appointed conservator.
Carl, when the conservator comes back with the final plan, after the engineer goes in and makes their assessment, do other parties have any standing there before the court to express their concerns or opinion, such as residents in the neighborhood?
So residents don't really have standing. The people who have standing would be the taxing entities, the school district, the township, and the county, and the mortgage company, the people who have liens. So there's a number of liens on this property, and you know, the people who have liens would have you know, a right to advocate for how to deal with it.
I mean, how many, it's 5 mortgages and 6 liens, is that correct?
Yeah, that sounds right. There's you know, the primary mortgage, and I know.
So everybody on that list has a right to have a voice in the.
To the extent they care.
To the extent that they can, yeah.
But they have a right to do it if they wanted to. They could.
Yes.
Because you remortgage 11 times.
Right, and some of those are, you know, he didn't pay for something to be done and he gave, you know, a lien in order to secure his debt.
Yeah.
You know, but ultimately, yes, those people have a right to stand before the judge and give their opinion.
Okay. Other questions? Yes.
One other question. The original appraisal, was that done by the township?
Yes.
Oh, it was.
They hired an appraiser. The
Yeah.
township hired an appraiser.
Right.
Is that what you meant?
Yes,
Yeah.
yeah. I wasn't sure if Mr. Kravitz did it or it was done by the township. So I just wanted clarification.
Stephen?
Sorry, this is a quick question. So in the court process, which court would this, or judge, do you have an idea this would appear in front of?
You don't know which judge until you file it. It's randomly assigned,
it's
and it's to a judge of the Court of Common Pleas in Chester County.
Okay.
Other questions? Are we getting near the end of the questions? Doug?
I just want to make a comment. Mr. Kravitz was gracious enough to allow our historical commission chair to go and document, take pictures.
Recently or years ago?
Relatively recent. Michael, was it relatively recent?
Spring 25.
Someone else? Thank you, Doug. Someone else had a question or not?
I have one.
Yes, Nate.
From what I understand, the property has a septic system on it. Would that be taken out, or would that be part of the process?
Ultimately, I guess it would really depend on what the scope of the remediation is. You know, if it were to be rehabilitated, I mean, I don't know that a 25-year-old since it was abandoned septic system would be viable. But you know, if it's not viable, yeah, it would be removed.
But not as part of the conservatorship. It would be part of the land development that would have to deal with that.
Probably, yes.
And unless the septic system's condition is in violation of any code provision, which I'm not aware of, it could probably remain as it is until such time it were to be developed in the future.
I guess
guess.
my concern would be if it is a septic system and it's probably not operational anymore and it would have to be removed and you would have contamination associated with that, which could be a very high cost from an environmental standpoint. So who would be responsible for that? Would that be part of the conservatorship?
I don't think so, because right now we're not aware of any code violations with respect to the condition of it.
I mean, presumably you're not going to disturb the septic field at all. You're just really looking at the building structures in terms of demolition and the bridge. And at that point, the kind of phase 1, phase 2 that was in the letter from BDP would be complete, and then you'd be at this point of looking to sell the property.
Yes.
Yeah. Other questions? Yes, Kathy.
I think I'm a little confused. Did the township hire someone to go assess that property?
To do an appraisal.
Do an appraisal?
Yeah.
They did?
Yes.
And what was it appraised at?
$2 million, he said.
$2 million?
Mm-hmm. Yes. Michael?
I have to ask this question. If the said owner of the property applies to West Goshen Township for a demo permit this week, what happens?
It won't have an impact. It's too late.
It's too late, okay.
Assuming the board approves the petition to be filed, he files it tomorrow.
Okay.
Any other questions? Yes. Yes.
Michael P. is following the claim. The previous owner, Dr. Freeman, his parents were buried on that property. Is there any impact to that?
So we would not be disturbing any ground other than the whatever was done with the buildings. So at this phase, it wouldn't impact.
Any other questions? Okay, so at this point, we are going to see where the board is in terms of its thoughts on potential approval of the action tonight, which is to approve the conservatorship petition for the 905 West Town Road property. Is there any final thoughts or dialogue that the board needs?
Do we need a resolution to that?
Need a motion.
Or just a motion?
Yeah, motion.
Mr. Chairman, there should be included in the motion the appointment of the law offices of Carl W. Ewald, PC, to serve as counsel to the township in this matter. He's provided an engagement letter, and I will note right on the first page it states West Goshen Township will not be responsible for any legal fees or costs. And it also notes in there that any costs associated with BDP will not be the responsibility of the township. Those are two items.
So I just want to paint a picture right now that the actions before the board could be do nothing, in which case this current situation continues until such time that Mr. Kravitz did pay off enough of the trash fees, whatever else, clears those debts at the township, and then gets issued a demolition permit, which he may or may not act on. And how long is the demolition permit? 6 months. So there's a kind of stasis option, which is the board does nothing tonight, versus an option which is to approve the appointment of the conservatorship petition, and we move forward with a way forward as has been described that will take action, and it will be done within whatever it is, 6 months through the court process to deal with this one way or another. Correct?
Yes.
All right. Okay, so board, we need you to.
I'll make the motion that we pursue conservatorship with the caveats that Mr. Bayshore.
So this is with the appointment of Mr. Carl Ewald as Esquire as the attorney for the petition on behalf of the township, and with the other conditions that you described a minute ago.
Are you talking about the engagement
Engagement
letter?
letter.
The engagement letter conditions, yes.
I second that motion.
A motion from Mr. Hellman and a second from Ms. Smith. Is there any final comments from the board or anyone in attendance related to the motion? Okay, then we'll take a vote. All in favor say aye. Aye. Is there any opposition? Hearing none, the motion passes 5-0. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Okay, next on the agenda, and I think most people will want to stay for this, I'm assuming. So, the next item on the agenda is continued discussion regarding a proposed historic resource ordinance. So, before the Board of Supervisors this evening is continued discussion regarding a proposed amendment to the Township zoning ordinance pertaining to historic resources. This was previously discussed at the February 4th, 2025 meeting of the Board. As noted, this has been worked on by the Historic Commission for several years. The ordinance would add definitions pertaining to historic resources, as well as establish a new section related to historic resource protection standards. The ordinance also sets forth demolition provisions, including provisions for demolition by neglect, which is what we've really just been talking about, unfortunately. At the February 4th meeting, the board indicated that the goal was to have the list of resources updated in order to notify the property owners on the list prior to authorizing the proposed ordinance for review and advertisement. While the Historic Commission has revised the list of historic resources and has worked with the Township Solicitor's Office regarding the ownership information, The owners of these properties have not yet been notified. Therefore, the next step will be to send appropriate notification to the list of property owners regarding a public meeting to discuss the proposed ordinance. Since this is a land use ordinance amendment, review from the Township Planning Commission and Chester County Planning Commission would ultimately be required prior to adoption. So the process we've had so far is we've got a draft ordinance that's been prepared. We have a list of historic properties in the township that the Historic Commission has pulled together and is, I believe, finalized in terms of its current state for a list of these properties. And so tonight what we're looking for the board to do is just review the ordinance, review the list, and see if we still are on the same page in terms of the next step, which was to then send this ordinance with a letter explaining what it's about to the list, to the property owners of the list, notifying them that we would have an agenda item to discuss it, give them plenty of notice, 6-8 weeks, to attend and have a conversation about it. I'm sure there'll be plenty of discussion at that meeting. And then depending on the outcome of that, the board may then take an action to move it through the municipal planning process, which would include review by the Chester County Planning Commission, review by our own planning commission. Then we would advertise it for adoption, and then subsequent to that, potentially adopt this ordinance. So that's the process we're talking about tonight, okay? So I'll kick it off, Kristen. I have some comments related to the current draft.
So did I. I had some comments too. So.
Let's see if they match up. So I noticed that we have, from its original version, we have kind of removed the Class 1, Class 2 designations, but there was some carryover of that concept through some of the words that are still in here.
I don't know where the revisions came from, to be honest.
Okay.
And I haven't.
I don't know.
So some of these things, like I had questions on, I had sent this to Chris in an email. Some of the language to me is still not totally clear. So I'm not clear from the last time our office reviewed, which was quite a while ago, to this.
Did you review it back in February? I forget.
No.
No.
So you haven't had a chance to review this?
No, I did review this again, but I'm saying I can't speak to
Okay,
the
what was
revisions that were made
okay.
from the last time we reviewed it.
Okay, so you have some questions. So let's start with the solicitor's questions. Go ahead, Kristen.
So 84-135A, page 5. I don't think that last sentence makes any sense. So I'm not clear. It says, upon zoning officer certification that the application for demo is completed. I don't understand to the extent authorizing the application for demolition. I'm not sure what that phrase means there. Then it says the historic commission shall take steps to arrange for either entry into the resource to document for posterity historic resource, which I get. And then the last phrase I don't understand. Or addition of documentation by drive-by of exterior views and interior if accessible and a current historic map is registered. I'm not clear what that last phrase means, but I would also say that unless you have the property owner's consent to enter, you can't do that. You need, when somebody submits an application to demolish, unless they're gonna authorize you, like Mr. Kravitz did, I guess in this case, you can't go in and do that. And HC doesn't have the power to do that. So, but the phrases that I called out, I'm not clear what they mean.
I think the intention of A is kind of clear to me, but the wording is confusing as to what the intention is. So we need to reword that, is really.
Yes.
So what else do you have,
The
Chris?
next one is on page 7. It's under 135B8, issuance or denial of the permit. So it speaks to, you get a recommendation from the historical commission and ultimately comes to the board, but then it says that it's a zoning officer decision. It says communicate to the applicant by decision of the zoning officer, and then if the applicants agree from the decision of the zoning officer, it goes to the ZHB. It wasn't a decision of the zoning officer, it was a decision of the board.
Okay.
So the appeal would not go to the zoning hearing board. And then I question whether the remedies, and I know this is common to see this in historic resource ordinances, but I caution that under 84-137, paragraph A and paragraph C, if a historic resource is demolished, the remedy is not under the MPC for a zoning violation to order somebody to rebuild it. That's just not a viable remedy that the MPC has. Not saying that you don't see that language, but I don't think you're going to get under the zoning enforcement provisions of the MPC. You have the right to get daily fines of $500 a day, and you have the ability to go to court and ask the court for equitable relief. I don't think in a circumstance, well, I guess it depends, but I've never seen a court say to somebody who's illegally demolished something without going through the process, oh, go spend millions of dollars and recreate it. I'm not even sure you can. It was a
So
historic
what does the
resource.
case law say? Surely it's happened where someone's demolished.
No,
historic property.
it hasn't happened.
It hasn't happened?
No, it hasn't happened. So, I mean, I would just caution that you should really, if it's in zoning, it has to follow what the MPC says as far as how you enforce zoning ordinances.
Okay. I mean, yeah. The goal of this ordinance is to, I mean, this is kind of in there, but it's not the intent behind this. You know, intent is not to say rebuild something that's clearly not, is already gone.
I'm just saying be realistic about that.
Exactly. I'm saying I support what you're saying. We need to rethink what this section is. I think. Is that it, Kristen?
Yeah, those were my.
So there are several situations where the removal of Class 1, Class 2 designation has left some cleanup needed. So under historic resources, it says historic resources are further classified. Strike that sentence because it's no longer further classified. On page 3, under 134B, towards the end it says class number. We don't have a class number. We don't have class designations anymore. Same section E on page 4, number 1, it's the last says or for a change in classification, strike that. And then on section E3, there's several pieces in here of any class needs to be struck together with or change the classification of an historic resource. And I would like to suggest for the board that applicants should receive notice 7 days is too short a time and should be at least 30 days, which is in section 136C5 and 7.
Anything else?
I think that was it.
I have a couple too.
Okay.
On page 5 and 6, it's very confusing. 84-135, general provision. There's section A, B, demolition permit requirement, section C, demolition permit procedures, and then you have the subsections there list starting with 3, which is very confusing. It should be 1, 2, and so forth. Because they do reference later on, in number 8, which should be number 5.
I'll note that I was provided with a PDF and I had to convert this to Word and then reconfigure. It is not fun. Reconfigure. I had to reconfigure some things. So some of the formatting does need to be. I'm fully aware that some of the formatting needs to be done, but I did have to export this out from PDF to Word.
Okay. So that needs to be renumbered there. I think that was the main one.
Well, Mr. Chairman, I'll note that the chair of the Historic Commission and a couple other members of the Historic Commission are present this evening in case the board has any questions.
Yeah, so let me just recap where we are. So there's several cleanups / reviews needed for several pieces of this. I mean, my view is, again, the board can state otherwise, is we probably need to see a cleanup version before we attach it to a letter to go out, so we all understand what we're sending to someone. So we need to bring this back in a couple of weeks, at which point we can then move forward with what we've previously agreed, which was the sending out of the letter with the ordinance. Does that sound correct approach to the board?
Yeah, I just have a comment too, if I could. So under 84-134, I've deemed all of D, I guess, the criteria for classification. I find a lot of it to be sort of vague and kind of subjective as to, I'll use B as an example, associated with the life of a person or history of an organization of importance to the history of the township, and I'm not sure who decides what's important to the history of the township. I just feel like there's a lot of language.
This is the language you're going to see in every historic resource ordinance, and I think it comes from the Department of Interior as far as standards. I don't disagree with you. I mean, at some point.
So this kind of language holds up as.
I mean, I would hope that a lot of these, that you're not basing a decision that something's a historic resource on meeting one of the criteria. I hope it would meet multiple criteria. But I think that this language is commonly used to identify what are considered to be historic resources.
I have a question related to the list. So the list is pretty comprehensive. It includes properties where structures have already been demolished and the property's been redeveloped. So I'm assuming the intention is not to send a letter to some current property owner where the historic resource is now no longer there. Is that
I
correct?
suggest cleaning up the list here. Why have a demolished property on this list at all?
Yeah, that's my question, where it's gone. Is that going to be taken off the list eventually? If the property's gone, does it still need to be on the list?
How can it be a resource if it isn't there anymore?
Yeah, and the second question I have is, can we actually have the weeping beech tree as a historic thing? 'Cause it's not a building. The building's gone, the tree's still there. It's over 100 years old, and the sustainability committee is taking care of it. But can we put a tree on an historic list?
Yeah, but the definition of your historic resource is a building, structure, or site, so it's the site where the tree is located.
Okay, but where the ones are gone, they're gonna come off?
What we are now is what we're talking about.
I mean, that is always, to me, the most important point, is that somebody's taking a look at this list, and one, to Ashley's point, making sure that things that are on this list meet the criteria that you're defining in some manner. And then secondly, making sure that this is a real list, that, yes, somebody's looked at it present day to say, these are still historic resources that meet these definitions and are worthy of preservation and protection under the regulations in this. So that should occur if it hasn't already.
So let's give folks who are on the Historic Commission that are present a chance to explain or describe where they are on the list. So Michael, I'm looking to you. Would you like to explain where you are on the list and whether you feel that you could easily show which ones are
Can I go back just a second, because the corrections, the questions that you had about the document itself, the only thing the Historic Commission, I shouldn't say the only thing, one of the few things that the Historical Commission changed with the original document that we had with which to work was that we added the section there where we can drive by a property to document its existence if it's to be slated for demolition. If we can't get into the property, then we have the right to drive by, stop on the road, take photographs, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. That's about the only real change that we did to the original document that we were presenting. With the demolition, with the list started in 1986 with Martha Wolf, who came down from the state and did a complete survey, which is recorded in the Chester County History Center and has been since 1968. The township came to be, and I'm going to say, Chris, you might be able to answer this, the first comprehensive plan, 91 or something?
If you say so, sure.
I was serving on Park and Rec still then, and they came to me as quote unquote the township person who knew the historic structure.
Is this part of the parks plan that was done previously?
Yes.
Okay, that was 1990, I believe.
Okay, so 1990, I took Martha Wolf's 1986 listing of 76 historic properties in West Goshen and went through every one, verified, et cetera, and added to her list. And then I did it again for the township for the second Park and Rec comprehensive plan, et cetera. And it was redone and sort of updated to a point. I mean, there's not a whole lot to update. It was redone this way because we left the demolished buildings in there because they are well documented in the Chester County History Center. And they are resources for people who want to go back and do historical research. So we thought we'll leave them on the atlas because yes, the property is not there, but the history is there. And if someone wants to go through the atlas and say, there was a beautiful old tavern on Goshen Road, et cetera, yes, it was. Bishop's Lodge, but it's now gone, but it's documented in the West Goshen's Historical Commission photos, and it's also well established in the state, in the county records.
I understand that logic.
Pardon?
I said I understand that logic.
Okay.
Because why else are you taking photos and trying to preserve it if it's not on any kind of list to recognize it as a historic property? I get that.
So I think we've got a better understanding of the list now. So all we need to do is just identify which ones are still have specific structures or trees or whatever it is that needs to have a letter sent to the property owner.
I have a question about the drive-by piece of what that you added. Do they need an ordinance to be able to drive by a property and take a photo? I think you have the ability to do that anyway, so I'm not sure that needs to be in here, right?
I mean, unless they're trying to get on private property to do it.
No, but
If you're on
just,
a public right
just
away.
to drive by, you can just drive by.
Yeah, I think the language was
Can you
that.
drone by, since we have new technology? If you're saying you're gonna drive by, can we own two drones, or we own one?
I would defer to the solicitor for that.
Is that against the wall?
I used to know the answer to that, I don't recall the answer, to be honest. I believe that there's a certain airspace upon which, when I represented East Goshen, they actually made it, they were concerned about people taking drones at a certain height on private property. I can't remember what the height was that didn't need anybody's permission. Above a certain height, you don't need certain permission. So I don't know the answer, but my advice would be, I would tell the property owner, I would ask the property owner for permission to do that, is what I would tell the township to do.
You can also get on Cheska Views and get a truck by right there.
But we can work on cleaning up the ordinance in terms of that section, definitely.
I think asking the property owners, most would probably be amenable to letting them do that.
It's got to be on Google Maps.
Well, we all know the story of it.
Okay, so Chris, I'm hearing the way forward is to get the ordinance tidied up, which is too big a deal, I don't believe, and to just review the list where there are existing structures that are still in existence that are considered historic resource, and then we would be in a position to send those property owners a letter that we need to draft, and together with the revised ordinance, cleaned up ordinance, and we would look to approve that potentially at our next meeting. Is that doable, do you think?
Probably, yeah. I think so. I don't think my changes are gonna take that long. Yeah.
Okay.
Can we see the tracking of that?
Sure, absolutely.
With everybody's changes?
Yeah.
I mean, just if you don't mind, could somebody explain how having this ordinance in place would have benefited us over the last 20 years, specifically with respect to the situation that has arisen at 905? What would we be able to do with this ordinance?
Demolition by neglect.
Yes. So
I mean,
what action would we
it'd
take?
still be a legal proceeding. It would just be another, we would cite him under zoning, and then we potentially could have fines of $500 a day, and it'd be civil fines. So, or we could, under the MPC, for a zoning violation, a property owner still does not bring the property to compliance, and the imposition of fines is not doing anything to motivate them, you can file what's called a section 617. So that's 617 of the MPC. You go to the Court of Common Pleas and you ask the court to order the property owner to bring the property into compliance. So it's sort of an alternative mechanism, not having a conservator be involved, but just going directly to the court and having the court order the property owner to remediate what has the conditions that are constituting demolition by neglect.
So which has more teeth, that approach or our current citing them for property code violations?
Well, they each have their pros and cons, because if it's under the zoning, they have the right to appeal it to the zoning hearing board. So then that costs the township more money to have to go through that process. $500 a day is a civil fine, so it does become lien against the property versus the property maintenance, which is a criminal fine, which the only remedy there is to issue warrants for the arrest of the defendant. And then what we've seen here is the judge reluctant to do anything when he didn't pay the $4,700. Now, he has our attention now, and now assuming that those $42,000 in fines for the 42 violations get upheld from the court, you know, the court may not be as willing to let him take his good old time to pay the $42,000. So I think they can be equally effective. I actually think the conservator is the most effective because of the constrained timeframes that the Act provides. And it's, you know, if you get the right judge that's going to take it very seriously and exercise the powers that they have the right under that Act, I think that that Act is the most beneficial.
Okay.
It's like another tool in the toolbox.
It is another tool in the toolbox.
Okay, so we've got a way forward. We don't need any motion or anything tonight. We're good on that. So if there's any questions on this, ask them now, Stephen.
Sure. Just a clarification question. Just something popped into my mind. And I don't know if this is an issue that the township can even address, or maybe it's a legislative issue. But if you own a home that's 150 years old or more, and it's a historic asset, what would be considered a historic asset, could there be some approach toward developing a fine system that's a little greater than an average homestead? That
Not
the
with the
town-
zoning, no. Again, the municipalized planning code constrains the township what the appropriate fines are for violations of zoning. And $500 a day for violation of the zoning. So it would have to be that you fine, the zoning officer would have to be able to cite the property owner for an actual violation of a zoning provision. And that the property owner does not appeal that determination within 30 days, you then can go to the district court and seek the fines.
I believe even if it were a standalone ordinance under the second-class township code, I think it's capped at $1,000, is that correct?
600 for civil and 100 for criminal.
Okay. 1,000 for criminal.
1,000 for criminal, excuse me.
I
600
guess-
for civil, 1,000 for criminal.
I guess in terms of living up to the state constitution to preserve historic assets as part of our welfare and resources, if there's a way of proposing harsher fines based on the age of the home.
Well, as we were talking about earlier today, the municipality is a creature of the state, so we only have the authority that's given to us by the state. So if that authority doesn't exist, we're limited by the fine amounts that are in either the MPC or the second-class township code.
So you mentioned the legislative issue, and it is a state legislative issue. You would have to get that taken to the state to enact a law that would allow that. Okay. I think we're done on that one. So if you don't mind, I need a 5-minute break to regroup. Maybe most of you want to leave and don't want to hear the rest of the township business. So we'll take a recess for a few minutes and then we'll get back to our regular agenda.
Thank you for rearranging.
You're welcome.
Thank you for coming.
There it is.
I
Sounds like that.
Reconvene, please. Yes.
Well, I know, but do you need us? No. Do you mind?
Thanks for being here.
Thank you.
Okay, we're back on the original order of the agenda, which is now number 5, discussion and possible adoption of resolution number 27, 2025, declaring the month of September as Childhood Cancer Awareness Month. So the Board of Supervisors is able to assist in raising public awareness. Of course, it's worthy of public support by putting on our public meeting agenda resolutions to recognize the needs. Often we'll have a township resident who is a passionate volunteer for the cause, and we'll bring the request forward. But tonight we're going to specifically look at a resolution of the township to declare the month of September as Childhood Cancer Awareness Month. There is several sections here to it, so I'm just going to read some of them out. So whereas each year thousands of children are diagnosed with cancer, a devastating disease that places unimaginable physical, emotional and financial burdens on children and their families. And whereas childhood cancer is the leading cause of disease-related death of children and teenagers in the U.S., despite advances in research and treatment. And whereas 1 in 5 children diagnosed with cancer will die within 5 years of diagnosis. In addition, 1 in 286 American children will be diagnosed with cancer before the age of 20. The average age of death for a child with cancer is 8, causing a child to lose 70 years of expected life. Whereas the overall incidence of childhood cancer is increasing, averaging 0.8% increase per year since 1975. And whereas Pennsylvania is home to exceptional doctors, nurses, researchers, and caregivers who are working every day to advance treatment options and offer hope to families, while organizations across the Commonwealth and the United States of America provide vital support and advocacy on behalf of the brave children and their families enduring this battle. And whereas by declaring September as Childhood Cancer Awareness Month, West Goshen Township stands united with the young heroes who face this disease with immeasurable courage, celebrates the survivors, supports families currently enjoying this battle, and remembers those who have been lost too soon. So with that, I'll make a motion to approve resolution number 27, 2025. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Nate. Any questions or comments from the board or anyone in attendance? Very good. We'll take a vote. All in favor say aye. Aye. Is there any opposition? Hearing none, the motion passes 5-0. Moving on to agenda item number 6, possible ratification of the electricity supply agreements for West Goshen Township streetlight accounts through the CoStar's Energy Procurement Program. Chris.
Mr. Mr. Chairman, before the board this evening is ratification of the electricity supply agreements for certain electricity accounts for the township. Specifically, the accounts before the board pertain to the township streetlights. The bids were open on August 5th through the CoStar's Energy Procurement Program, and the results were as follows. WGL Energy, who is the current provider for electricity for these accounts, at a rate of 5.431 cents per kilowatt hour for a 2-year contract term. The rate is fixed through the entire length of the term. And I'll note that the previous rate was 5.08 cents per kilowatt hour, so the new rate does represent a increase of
6.9%.
6.9%. And the PICO, I'll note that the PICO price to compare that was provided to the township through the CoStar's program is 5.719 cents per kilowatt hour.
Thanks, Chris. Any questions from the board?
Were there any other bidders besides WGL?
We don't see all the bidders that submit. We just get the award information.
My understanding is the PICO price to compare is probably the bid price they did in the actual go-round for this. Because if you look at PICO's price to compare from a residential commercial on PA Power Switch, it's much higher than that. So this is a bid to secure a bunch of accounts, I would guess.
So we're in a bid with anyone that's in the PICO service territory for this type of rate and service.
Any other questions, Nate?
Yeah, if there are streetlights in a neighborhood, would this be part of it, or are we? Yeah.
So the way the streetlights work in the township is we don't own any of the streetlights, but we pay for the electricity for them. Okay. The only ones we don't do anything for, I believe, are those that are owned and maintained by like homeowners associations.
Any other questions? Okay, I will make a motion to ratify the electricity supply agreement for the streetlight accounts with WGL Energy at a cost of $0.05431 per kilowatt hour for the 2-year period, January 1st, 26 to December 31st, 27. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Thank you, Tina. Is there any other comments or questions from the board or anyone in attendance? Very good. We'll take a vote. All in favor say aye. Aye. Is there any opposition? Hearing none, the motion passes 5-0. Agenda item number 7, discussion and possible award of the 2025 custodial services bid for West Goshen Township. Chris.
Mr. Chairman, before the board this evening are the results of the 2025 custodial services bid for West Goshen Township. This contract would be for 3 years and would involve the cleaning of the buildings at the township's municipal complex, as well as the administrative facilities and break room at the wastewater treatment plant. The bids were open on August 28th and 4 bids were received. I did provide a copy of the bid tabulation. The low bid was from Service Master Clean in the amount of $5,715 per month, which is 9% lower than the low bid from the previous contract. I'll note that that's a fixed rate per month during the life of the contract. One thing that we've done subsequent to the materials we provided to the board for this evening is we did, Mike Cacovo, our Assistant Public Works Director, did do a reference check on Service Master, and everything came back very positive. They noted good communication, punctualness, and like how thorough they are. He checked with Avon Grove School District, the Chester County Intermediate Unit, and Bishop Shanahan High School. And all 3 of them, I think the shortest one that he spoke with had been using them for 5 years, and the other 2 have been using them for around 20.
This is lower than what we're currently getting?
Yes, around 9% lower.
Is there an escalation per year for the 3-year term?
No, it is fixed throughout the life of the contract.
And how often do they come?
They come every day, Monday through Friday. They come every day, Monday through Friday. You'll probably see them walking through here at some point.
Make the motion quickly.
Do they know this? How do they know the scope? Did they
So
come
we
visit
did-
the site?
We did a mandatory pre-bid meeting on August 12th. And we had, actually I think there were 5 that showed up to that, but I could be wrong. But we did do a mandatory pre-bid meeting where Mike did a tour of the facility with everybody. That's something we do before any of these contracts.
Okay, including the sewer location as well, right?
I believe so. It's just the break room. It's that whole administrative office area and the break room, so it would include any of those.
They clean our office?
I don't know if there's trash, I could check, but yeah, Mike takes them on a whole tour of the whole facility.
There's usually trash in there, that's why I ask.
No, if there's anything, just let me know. I'll take care of it.
Who do we have doing it now?
It's the second lowest bidder, Interstate Maintenance. So I'll note that like the three lowest bids were all within about $1,200–1,300 of each other, and then there was a larger price difference. So they were fairly competitive results.
I'll make a motion then.
Yeah.
I'll second that motion.
Sasha's made the motion to award the 2025 custodial services bid to Service Master Clean in the amount of $5,715 per month, fixed for a 3-year contract. Tina seconded. Is there any questions or comments from anyone? Okay, then we'll take a vote. All in favor say aye. Aye. Is there any opposition? Hearing none, the motion passes 5-0. Okay, now we're on to agenda item number 8. Discussion and possible awarding of bids for items authorized for sale by West Goshen Township. So before the Board of Supervisors this evening is consideration to award the bids for certain items that were authorized for sale. The Board authorized these items for sale at the meetings on June 17th and July 15th. The bid opened on August the 5th and closed on August 28th. And public inspection of the items was held on August the 18th and August 26th. And the results are listed for 9 items in total. So I'm going to look at the bids in order. So 2010 Caterpillar forklift. The winning bid amount was $11,650, and the estimated value for that was between $7,250 and $10,550. So the highest bid is in excess of the estimated value high end. So should I go through all these in order? Do we need to do that, Chris, or do we just need to review the list in its entirety?
You can review the list in its entirety and do the...
Yeah, so that one I highlighted in particular is because we have a question on the table related to potentially donating that item to the fire training school. So let me provide that information. The township received a request from Westchester Fire Training Center regarding the 2010 Caterpillar forklift. The request indicated that this item could be utilized at the Fire Training Center on Snyder Avenue and asked if this would be considered for a donation. It is our understanding that the Fire Training Center is under the umbrella of the Westchester Fire Department and has its own 501c3 setup. They have been advised that this decision is at the discretion of the board. Please be advised the winning bid was $1,100 above the high-end estimated value for the item. So what is the board's position with respect to the potential donation of the forklift versus accepting the highest bid?
Can I ask, Steve, can I ask you a question? Would you be able to answer, how would they utilize this forklift?
The forklift is used to utilize, to clean out all the rooms on the floors. So have moved the pallets around. It's actually used very heavily. We store pallets down there as they're donated, conceivably hundreds of pallets, because that's what we burn for the fire training center. So they're moving pallets around all the time. They're also using the forklift. I've used it. We have a belt buckle in the front of it, so that after we're done in a fire room, we basically take shovels, shovel all the ashes and all the other crud out of the room into this bucket, and then we take it over and dump it in the pit. So the forklift down there has got some age to it. I can't tell you exactly how old it is, but there's requiring a lot of service. So if I would ask the township if they could consider this. It's a necessary piece of equipment down there. It's stored in a building we have down there on the inside, and it's expensive to maintain. The fire school operates a pretty tight budget because they basically get money from the Firemen's Relief who use it, mostly Westchester, and any of the other outside communities that come in, they pay a fee per person to use the fire center. And it's one of the only, it is actually the only fire center that we can do live burns. Up in Coatesville, it's basically done with gas. They turn a switch on, they ignite with a flame with gas, and try and create a situation where it's a live burn, but it's not. So the Westchester Fire Training Center does that, and it's one of a kind training center.
Steve, is the live burn better than the gas?
Well, yeah, because you can make things pretty hot. Okay, so it gives a more realistic field. Firefighters go in there and they knock out fire, they'll set pallets on fire, and then wait till the heat and smoke build up, and move down the room, so it gives you a more realistic experience.
Have any other townships sold this equipment, and have you ever approached them recently or in the past?
I don't.
Okay, I'm just curious if other townships contribute rather than just West Goshen contributing $11,000. If other townships will contribute into the sale or purchase or?
Yeah,
Okay.
it's definitely a West Goshen donation, or if you can negotiate something with them to pay monthly amount, a couple $1,000 a day monthly if you want to do something like that. But it's definitely something that I'm sure they would appreciate.
And are there fire companies using the fire training center beyond Westchester Fire?
Goshen uses it pretty extensively. East Goshen, or Malvern, there's some out-of-state fire companies that come up. I mean, it's because of the live burn factor. That's why it's really advantageous. So they're usually busy on the weekend, every weekend, and a lot of the evenings during the week.
And they pay a fee for the training?
Yes, they do. It's a head fee. Yeah. It's like, I don't know, $50 a person per experience.
Okay, so where's the board in terms of its position with respect to this potential donation to the fire training company?
Well, I would be okay with it. I would support that. I mean, it goes towards the training of firefighters in the area, which is an essential service. I understand it's a pretty sizable donation for the township, but I think we're in a position to be able to afford such a donation, but I would support that.
Okay, other board member thoughts on this?
I would support that too, and donating it to the Westchester Fire.
Okay, anyone else have a view?
I would like to see us get some type of reimbursement for it.
Okay, so what would you suggest? Are you thinking that they need to match the bid that we got?
Not even saying matching the bid, maybe even going to the lower estimated value of $72.50.
Ashley, any thoughts?
I'm torn because while obviously I would love to just donate a piece of equipment that the fire companies obviously need and use, I, as a representative of our constituents and safeguarding our tax dollars, and I know that we got a good amount for this equipment. I don't know if we do this now, if later other companies come and expect us to keep donating equipment. Like, it puts us in sort of a position where now we either have to say no to subsequent requests for equipment. I'm not totally convinced. So Sean, I mean, where are you leaning?
So we did receive an email from Ms. Margie Swart related to this, and she did point out that this highest bidder is a business in West Goshen that's looking to, continue to be successful, and that they're willing to bid a value of $11,650, is it, for what is a taxpayer asset at this point. So I'm really on the page with Nate that if the fire company wanted this, then we should look to achieve what we believe was the value for it. It's still a good buy, presumably. I don't know what that budget is. We don't have enough information to assess it, so I'm not on the page of donating it tonight.
Just one other point. They do charge fees to the Goshen Fire Company for this, as well as the Westchester Fire Companies. So in some ways, the money that you give to fire companies actually, means they may not have to raise fees at some point. I mean, it's not a big amount, but $10,000 is not a big amount in all the scheme of things, honestly. But so their fees are based on what their costs are. So if it costs more money to run the fire school, then they, instead of $50 a person, they may charge $55 or $65, whatever the amounts go. So ultimately, the fire companies pay the fees to run the fire school and to make it up. So just
And and
It's a
it's
cycle.
domino effect. And
Yeah,
then if
it's a
they
full
don't have
cycle.
enough money, then they're gonna come to the townships for
I
more
mean,
money to
I know.
contribute. Yeah,
You know,
domino
I
effect.
don't want to, I don't feel comfortable donating a piece of equipment to one fire company and then potentially denying the same to a different fire company or emergency services company or any sort of organization. So I feel like if we do this, then we're sort of, you know,
Favoring them.
correct. And I don't want us to come across as favoring any fire company over another fire company because I feel like those organizations are very,
These are the fire companies that protect West.
They are, all
Township.
of them.
Not,
They all contribute to the training center.
yeah, it is a training center.
who owns the equipment? Who would own the equipment?
Westchester Fire Training Center.
Right, so I mean, that's an asset for them that we would be donating to them. And while, you know, they collect fees from being able to allow other companies to use that, it still puts us in a position where now we're donating an asset to one fire company and potentially denying another fire company of an asset. And so I'm just uncomfortable doing that.
Okay.
That's why I don't think I'm on the page to donate. I'm sorry.
Okay. Well, let's test what the board is. Does a board member want to make a motion to donate this forklift truck? If not,
Make a
we'll...
motion?
You will? You want to make a motion?
Yes, I'll make the
Okay,
motion.
so Tina's made a motion. Is there a second?
I'll second.
That's a second. All right. So the motion is to donate for zero value the forklift truck to the Westchester Fire Training Center. So is there any public comment on the motion? Doug?
I would say not donate it because we already give a lot of money to, in our donation, in our, anyway, to the Goshen and Westchester.
Okay. Any other comments? All right, then we'll take a vote. All in favor say aye.
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 All against say, state your opposition. Opposed?
No.
Opposed.
Okay, so the vote doesn't win. It loses 2. All right, so back to the municipal bid sale items list. What issues does the board have in relation to the other items on the list?
Mr. Chairman, can I just
Yeah.
add one thing to the previous discussion, just real quick? So when I spoke to the fire training people, just to clarify something, they said, I asked them, are you interested in purchasing this item, or were you looking to have the township donate to the fire training center? They said a donation would be the most favorable outcome for their organizations. They didn't say no, that they wouldn't be willing to consider purchasing it. So an option that the board could have is to authorize me to go to them with a price, be it either the low end of the estimate or the amount that came in on municipal bid, and then we can go from there.
So,
Yeah,
yes.
I would be opposed to that because we've run a bid process with a winning bid at this point. That was not the, that to me is a corruption of the process
But
at this
are we
stage.
legally required to accept the highest bid or interpret it?
You can reject any and all bids, but, you know,
How long is the bid good for?
well, if you award it, they have 10 days in which to pay.
When do we have to make the award is my question.
It was advertised to make a decision tonight. Because this came about to my attention after everything went up on municipal, after the board had authorized everything and everything went up on municipal, the bidding process had started, and I had advised them at the time the bid was already over $3,200. I told them the price that the bid was standing at because it's publicly accessible.
So if we go to them and we give them the option to purchase it maybe at the lower end, and they decline, do we then just continue with the highest bidder?
In theory, you could.
Your motion has to say that.
Yeah, your motion would have to include that in there.
So this is not a rejection of the bid that we received, but more like before we accept the bid, offering it to somebody else?
Correct. You could, since we got that request, and I would hope that if they're a local business, they would kind of understand. But that's all obviously at the discretion of the board, but I have to give you guys all the options, so.
I mean, it goes back to, I still think that's setting precedent.
Yeah, I agree.
I don't, I disagree. I don't think that's setting a precedent. I think giving each fire company the ability to purchase, maybe even first, I would support that.
I mean, the counter to that is they had the opportunity to bid on it while it was on municipal bid. That's kind of the counter to it.
Well, they may have been waiting to see if we were going to donate it before they bid.
Potentially,
You
yes.
don't need to go through the procurement process if you donate it. That's one of the exemptions for public bidding done. It's not required to go through a public bid process if you donate it to an organization such as the fire.
So they probably waiting for the decision tonight to see if we were going to donate it before they put it in, which makes sense to me.
Well, then, can we make a motion that the sale for the forklift be pending, and outreach to the Westchester Fire Training Center and see if they're interested in purchasing this particular piece of equipment at the low end of the estimated value?
And that's an option for the board, but I would also I would tell them that they have a finite amount of time
Sure.
in which to make the decision, like would probably tell them 48 hours at the most.
Well, do they have to have a board meeting to do
Yeah,
that?
see, that's the other thing.
They have to have a board
They
meeting
might
to do
have
that.
a
I
board
don't know if
meeting.
somebody's authorized to just do that. So I don't think they could do it in the time.
You wouldn't know when that might be, Steve.
I think we did.
Yeah.
So volunteers on the board. And the board's volunteer people, treasurer, president, all of that, just like finding relief. This is, that's what it is. It's your local emergency services is who you're talking to here. And there's no question you've donated a lot of money now, but it's what it is.
So you want to give them a week?
These bidders on I don't think a week would be adequate, because I think the bidders on municipal bid, as soon as they win, they start contacting me as to when they can come pick it up, even though I put explicitly in there that it has to be voted on by the board before any transaction occurs.
Well, this is just an option too, like if we decide not to come to them with this offer, moving forward, can we communicate to them if they're interested in a piece of equipment, that if they were to bid on it or come to us first, that we would give them first dibs on whatever?
You can absolutely do that.
And maybe not this if we're not in a position maybe to pull that right now.
Yep, you can absolutely do that, and as Kristen said, under the second-class township code, if you're donating it or you're selling it to another municipal entity, you don't have to go through the public bid process. The second-class township code provides for that.
So maybe we can,
And we do have several pieces of equipment that are coming up for replacement for 2026 that we'll talk about with the budget process.
So it could just be a practice for us to approach the fire companies to see if they want anything before we put it out.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, we can do that.
Moving forward,
Moving forward.
with the exception of this.
I would be more comfortable with that.
Yes. I think that's a completely fair approach, and it gives them both the option.
I agree.
For this one, it was voted no.
Well, we haven't voted yet.
Well, you voted not to donate it.
We voted not to donate, but no one made the motion to ask for give it to them at $7,250 because it could meet the timeline.
I didn't mean to cloud the process, but I have to give you every option.
I'll withdraw that motion.
But we didn't have a motion, I don't believe, so. We discussed it, but we didn't go further with it. So, is there any other questions on the items that are under winning bids at this point? I had one question that I asked Chris earlier today, which is the one that stood out to me was the Caterpillar backhoe was significantly below the estimated minimum value. Chris, do you want to explain the response you got for that?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. So the bid result, the estimated value for that was between $57,100 and $64,500. And the highest bid amount came in at $40,100. I did talk to John about this when the bids closed, and we kind of took the opinion of it's not an impact on the actual piece of equipment, but more just on what the market was looking to bid. I always start these at 20% of the high-end value, hoping that we'll exceed that, and in most cases we do. But in this case, it's just what the market was for this piece of equipment. And I did talk to Mark about it today, and Mark did say to me that, it's in good condition, but he said over 10 years of use, it shows its wear, was what he said.
3 of the cars are in that category too, where they're under what the estimate.
John told, as it relates specifically to the 2019 Ford Explorer, John told me that when he was putting together the information, he underestimated the amount of work that needs. And police vehicles.
Yeah, we've seen this all the time.
And 2018 also was on there.
The police vehicles, no disrespect to our police department, police vehicles tend to get less because of the number of significant modifications that they need in order to be operational and provide the services for the police department. So sometimes you're going to get more, sometimes you're going to get less.
always less with police vehicles, it seems. Anyway.
They also take more wear on them because they run 24 hours.
Okay.
No disrespect, Jonathan.
All right, so any other questions on the winning bids?
Now let's move on.
Okay, I will make a motion to approve the sale of the listed items at the winning bid amounts. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Nate. Is there any other comments, questions from anyone? Okay, I'll take a vote. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Is there any opposition? Hearing none, the motion passes 5-0.
I will communicate to Mr. Barton at the Fire Training Academy, at
Okay.
the Fire Training Center.
Thank you, Chris. Okay, now we're on to agenda item number 11, which is discussion and possible approval for proposal from Rhythm Engineering for technical support for the traffic signal camera control system at 6 intersections in West Goshen Township. This is with Chris.
Mr. Chairman, before the board this evening is a proposal from Rhythm Engineering for technical support for the traffic control system at the following intersections: East Boot Road and Route 202, East Boot Road and Green Hill Road, Westchester Pike and Green Hill Road, Westchester Pike and Golf Club Apartments / the entrance to the shopping center, Westchester Pike and Strasburg Road, and Westchester Pike and Ellis Lane. And this would be through the end of the year. The fee amount is $3,000. This expense was not included in the 2025 budget. Just for reasoning, previously we were charged for hourly maintenance if anything needed to occur, and it was included in our traffic signal maintenance account. But there was no specific allocation for this service contract. So this is separate from the license plate readers the township has and the traffic signal maintenance that we receive from Charles A. Higgins and Sons. If there was service needed, the township was billed on an hourly rate. Brian Kolakowski reviewed the previous history, and the utilization of their service has been limited, totaling over the last 2 years about $688. Rhythm Engineering has informed municipalities that if they do not sign support contracts, they cannot be billed on an hourly rate any longer, and they will not be provided any support without an agreement. I will note that Brian is working with Charles A. Higgins and Sons on pricing on a replacement system that would integrate with the current traffic signal control system that the township utilizes in all of its signals, but that would be a future project. So based on the review of the information that Brian did provide to me, I don't see an alternative at this time. I think we kind of have to go forward with this because if something goes down, they won't provide any service to us for our traffic signal cameras.
We didn't have an agreement with them before?
No, not one that Brian could locate. They would just come out and bill us on an hourly basis, and now they're changing their policies. I will note that after reviewing this and talking to Ms. Camp, we do need to make some changes to this because it makes reference to Kansas, and since the contract is being entered in Pennsylvania, it needs to reflect the laws of Pennsylvania as being governing.
Okay. So Kristen's office, you're going to review the payment terms and the terms and conditions of this agreement?
I did.
Yeah.
She did.
That's the only issue you found?
And I advised Kristen when reviewing this that that was the one thing that I saw and asked her if she had any other comments, and we were in agreement that that was the only comment that we had.
So I guess this does not include taxes, so that would be additional.
Well, we're tax exempt. We're a
Okay.
tax exempt entity.
And then quote does not include additional fees in the event Rhythm serves as primary contractor. So what does that mean? They are a primary contractor. So additional fees. So there could be additional fees associated with this?
I'm not aware of what any additional fees would be because if there was an issue, this is who we would contact.
Because the contract payment terms allows them to charge additional fees.
I think that means if they need some kind of expertise that they don't have in-house, and they have to bring in another vendor to do some particular work, that would be billed by, that would be in addition to their cost. That's what I'm assuming.
That's what we don't know. You can't assume, but it's not written there.
They're the only ones that maintain
Yes, they're the only ones that can maintain the system as it stands right now, and that's why Brian's working with Higgins on an alternative system, because they provide the maintenance for, like, say when the red lights goes out, they're the ones who comes out and maintains it, or if the signal's like on flash, they'll reset it, or if there's a problem with timing. But they don't do anything with the camera system that's in the signal locations.
So this is only this company is able to work on this equipment as far as we know?
That's correct, and based on Brian's research, we are not the only ones of our colleagues who are in this type of situation.
Okay.
Are there cameras in other intersections in the township?
I don't know, but these are the only 6 that these service.
How long is this contract for?
So this goes until the end of the year, and then there will be a new one in 2026.
And, I mean, are
Charging
they
us
gonna
three-
increase it by, double next year? Will we have a choice then? Or is there
We're
any
not-
protections that we have to like ensure?
We're not really going to have a choice. It's actually going to be $6,000 for the full year. We're not really going to have a choice in that, but that's why Brian's working with Higgins on an alternative system that we can implement. So there's probably going to be a capital project that's going to be to change over the whole camera system and then have Higgins service that. Because they can't service what this system is. I don't know.
Charges hourly?
They charge us hourly if they have to come out and do any sort of service.
They're local.
They're local.
Local company and
They're based at,
people use them.
yeah, that's who I used in Malvern.
So they're traffic signals.
So we were to spend a ton of money switching these out and paying Higgins hourly. Who's to say that they wouldn't come back and say,
Don't you have a contract with Higgins?
I believe so, yes.
Yeah. And you can negotiate your contract with Higgins once.
Oh, because they maintain the traffic.
Yep, they maintain all the traffic signals. So like I said, if there's a malfunction, that's who we call. We don't call these guys. These are just for the
So it
cameras.
just gets us to the end of the year.
Correct.
It gives you time to explore options.
All right.
Okay.
So my recommendation would be, if the board does make a motion on this, it's contingent on addressing any comments from myself and the solicitor.
Just a minor point, is it Westchester Pike and Green Hill Road?
Yeah, I was wondering where that was. I didn't picture
It's
that.
on the list. It's actually, Chris transposed it wrong into it's 5 Points Road.
That's
Just
fine.
Pike
I
Road.
apologize.
Figure where those 2 roads intersected.
I apologize.
I was
I
sitting on
apologize.
every intersection in my brain. I'm like, where am I missing
Yeah,
this?
I apologize for that.
I drive that road daily. I'm sure you all do.
Okay. Any other questions or comments from the board? Is a board member willing to make a motion to approve this proposal from Rhythm Engineering with the caveat of continued input review from our solicitor and the township manager?
I'll make the motion.
Thank you, Nate. Is there a second?
I was second.
Okay, is there any comment or question from anyone here? Very good, then we'll take a vote. All in favor say aye. Aye. Is there any opposition? Hearing none, the motion passes 5-0. Agenda item number 12 is discussion regarding road safety upgrades being completed by the PA Department of Transportation at certain locations in West Goshen Township. Chris.
Mr. Chairman, I'll introduce this topic and then I'll bring the plan up to the screen. So before the board this evening is discussion regarding proposed safety upgrades on roadways in West Goshen Township. These are being undertaken by the PA Department of Transportation and there's no cost to the township. However, once they're installed, the township is required to maintain the improvements. PennDOT is implementing these under their Highway Safety Improvement Program and is intended to improve locations identified using crash data where local roads intersect state roads. The locations outlined are as follows. They're basically all of the intersection of Paley Pike and Fern Hill Road and then branching off from there. There's a proposed road paint installation that will utilize thermoplastic products and signage that will utilize reflective sheeting. The signal plan will need to be updated at the intersection of Paley Pike and Fern Hill Road with PennDOT signals unit upgrading the plan. These township, as some of the proposed improvements are on township-owned roads, they will need authorization to complete the improvements. I did have Mark review these the proposed plan, and he agreed with what was outlined. He also pointed out to me today when we were discussing it, and I missed this on my review, they're also putting in rumble strips down the center line of the roadway. I missed that during my initial review. He thought this was a long time coming. He noted like the curvature in the roadway, and he thinks that this is beneficial, so I'll bring the plan up now.
If they're done, does the township then, once they're installed, the township's responsibility to maintain?
Yes, so once they're installed, then we have to maintain the signs, the road paint, everything like that.
Conceivably, that's more expensive than what's there today, right?
They're using thermoplastic, so yes, thermoplastic is more expensive than regular road paint. I'm trying to bring it up full screen. I know. But it looks like they're putting some of the improvements along where they intersect with the state roadway. Most of the improvements you can see here are at the intersection of Fern Hill Road and Paley Pike. There's no, I'm 99% sure there are no improvements being done to the signal, so there's no new signal head or anything like that being put in.
Where's the rumble strips?
It looks like they are down the center line of the road. I think it's what they're called, install center line.
Sinusoidal?
Yeah,
rumbles?
rumble
Oh, I
strips.
see it now.
It's a word I cannot pronounce. But they're going down the center line of the road.
They don't need maintenance, right? There's nothing to maintain there.
I don't believe so.
It's just the striping and the signs if they get damaged.
Correct. So they're putting in, and we already maintain plenty of signs on PennDOT roadways when they get knocked down. And we manufacture our own signs in-house.
Okay. Including reflective type signs?
I believe so, yes.
All right. Any other comments or questions from the board?
Yeah, I haven't used this intersection quite often. I think this is a great idea.
Okay. Thanks, Nate. Any other comments?
And just a minor comment, Paley Pike, and I think the second one should be High Top Lane. That's what the print says it is anyway.
Yeah.
I can let PennDOT know about that. So I'll have to execute, so there should be a motion from the board approving the improvements from PennDOT, because I'll have to execute a T-160 form for them.
Yeah. Yes. Fern Hill Road intersection, High Top Road and Green Avenue are the three. Okay, I will make a motion to approve the road safety upgrades to be completed by the PA Department of Transportation at those locations as described. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Thank you, Tina. Is there any comments or questions from anyone? Okay, then we'll take a vote. All in favor?
Mr. Walsh,
I'm sorry, Doug.
So if you don't approve it, can PennDOT do these anyway?
Not on township roads, as we were just talking about.
Yeah, because there's some improvements that are on township-owned roadways, like road painting and things like that. They need the township's approval before they can
For
install
the
it.
side road, okay, I'm sorry.
Okay, any other questions? Okay, I'm ready to take a vote. All in favor say aye. Aye. Is there any opposition? Hearing none, the motion passes 5-0. Okay, agenda item number 13 is approval of the Board of Supervisors meeting minutes from August the 5th. I'll make a motion to approve the meeting minutes from August the 5th. I did provide some comments to Chris earlier today about a couple of typos only. Is there anyone else with any corrections or information that we need to make to the minutes?
I just have a question, not regarding approval, but what is the status of the third-party urban engineers to review the Westchester University Master Plan? Is the Westchester Borough agreed to do this?
So, yes, we received comments from Westchester Borough that they did agree to do it. They did set a cap at $20,000, I believe it was.
So did Brian reach out to you that Westchester University is willing to pay each municipality $20,000 for their...
Towards
He did not reach out to me about that.
Well, so the borough, just to make sure I'm clear on this, the borough ordinance has a provision that conditional use applicants have to reimburse the borough. And Sean reached out to me and said, is that lawful? And I said, no. The MPC does not allow a municipality to recoup consultant fees on conditional use applications. That's limited to land development applications. Given that, though, Brian, and I believe, I'm almost positive, is also going to make the same offer to West Goshen, because his point was that the university is often asked to help fund some of the impacts that the university has on both the borough and West Goshen, fire, police, and oftentimes they don't have the funding, but here they have set aside funding for this master plan, and so they made an offer to the borough to pay up to $20,000 as the consultant fees. So that was the borough's. They had a special meeting last Thursday to approve the engagement of urban, but cap it at $20,000. Chris indicated back to Sean that this will be brought before you at your next meeting.
Yeah.
We can get clarification. I'm pretty certain that they're going to make that same offer back to you to offer up to $20,000. I said to Sean in an email, copy Chris, it's hard for urban to tell you exactly what it's going to cost. I can't imagine it's going to be more than $40,000 for the review, but it's a new project. So, and I don't represent urban, but maybe we could have another conversation to see if they feel comfortable that the $40,000 is pretty much going to cover definitely the initial review, the review letters, that kind of thing, and engagement with both the borough and West Goshen. It seems like that would be more than enough.
Yeah, and I will note that we sent all the comments that Kristen had on their engagement letter back to them. We got the revised version back, I want to say it was on Friday, and I sent it on to Kristen. She reviewed it. Everything that she had was addressed except for one item which was related to the limit of liability, but what they proposed, Kristen was comfortable with.
Okay, so at the next meeting in September, we're going to be able to see a final version together with clarity on whether the university's offering to cover.
Yeah, and I have
up to
a call
25.
scheduled with Brian on a different matter tomorrow, and I will make sure I bring this up and have him reach out directly to Chris.
He called me today and didn't mention anything about
He
this.
compartmentalizes what he's dealing with, which I get that, so we'll get clarification for you.
Okay, any other questions on the minutes? Okay, so we have a motion and a second, so anyone have any comments? Nope. Okay, ready to take a vote. All in favor say aye. Aye. Is there any opposition? Motion passes 5-0. Final agenda item is approval of the bills to be paid for the general fund, the sewer revenue fund, the waste and recycling fund, and the capital reserve fund. I will make a motion to approve the bills to be paid from those funds. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Tina. Does any board member have a comment on the bills list? Questions?
I have a question on the prepaid bills. So check number 103186. It's for Duval Bus Service. It's for Class A license fee. Can you just explain what that was for?
So what was the check number again?
103186.
So we have certain employees that are going through their Class A CDL licensing.
Oh, this is for CDL?
Yes,
Oh, okay.
this is for their Class A CDL licensing. So this is one of the former Parks employees that's going through that.
Okay.
Any other questions from the board? Okay, is there any questions or comments from the public on the bills? Okay, we'll take a vote. All in favor say aye. Aye. Is there any opposition? Passes 5-0. A motion to adjourn the meeting at 8:33. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Nate. All in favor of adjournment say aye. Aye. We are done. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Good night.
Yep.